Hello mamas, and welcome back to the Pregnancy with Physio Laura podcast. Today we are diving into episode 4 of 5 in this C-section birth series, where I'll be sharing my second birth story with you all. So I am picking up where we left off in the last episode, sharing the interview I did with Sophie from the Australian Birth Stories podcast, which was recorded only a few weeks after I gave birth to my second baby. Make sure you listen to the first 3 episodes that we've already released in this C-section birth series, as they will help to give you some great information and background on C-sections before you dive into today's episode. Today I share about my journey with my second pregnancy and birth, which, whilst it ended in a similar fashion to my first, was a very different experience for me. So I talk about my experience with preparing for a VBAC, the things I changed in this pregnancy to try and help me mentally and physically prepare better. And I think it's very unique to use this interview, as I was sharing all of this just a few short weeks after my birth. So you can hear in my voice how positive and okay I felt about the whole process. And I'm quite surprised, to be honest, just how energetic I sound for a new mum. And I'm kind of wishing I had that energy right about now. So I'm looking forward to doing a similar thing with my upcoming third birth. As I record this interview today, I'm over halfway into my third pregnancy. And I think I will also try to record my birth just a few weeks afterwards, so that everything is fresh and raw and a really beautiful memory to look back on. So as I mentioned in the last episode where I shared my first birth story, I wanted to use this interview with Sophie because it was raw. I didn't want to change it by re-recording it now. I'd actually forgotten a lot of the details that I shared with Sophie, and it was actually really nice to listen back to it 1.5 years later on and remember the things that I had forgotten about. So I hope you enjoy today's episode, and as always, please come over and chat to me on Instagram or Facebook at PhysioLaura, because I really do love hearing what you got out of each episode and whether maybe me sharing some of my story resonated with you. Now, for today's Laura's Life Lessons, something that has been on my mind and that also ties back really well with this birth episode. You may have heard some people saying on social media, take the photo. And what I understand that to mean is that for partners to take the photo of mum looking tired with baby on her chest, or take the candid photo of her kissing her baby's head, even if she isn't posed or ready or smiling, because these are the memories we long to look back on and cherish. These are the raw, real times that we want to be able to show our kids when they're older. I personally have so many breastfeeding photos or videos on my phone because I want to be able to look back and remember just how wonderful those times were. And listening back to me sharing my birth interviews was so interesting, and I'm so glad that I have a recorded version of it to hold from that specific moment in time. So whether it's a voice memo on your phone, a journal in the notes section of your computer, pen to paper reflections on where you're at right now in this moment, or the photo that seems unpolished and raw, take it. Do it. These memories you'll never regret. Now, let's get into episode 4 of our 5-part C-section birth series, chatting all about my second pregnancy and birth story.
Were you trying for long to conceive, Pia, or did you find that happen quite quickly again?
Again, we were really lucky. So my main thing was I'd always thought I'd like kids close together. It had always been how I imagined my family would turn out. But when you're breastfeeding, it's always that, it's really dependent on when my body decides it's ready to conceive again. And I remember, again, researching and Googling, can you fall pregnant if you haven't had your period come back, and going down a rabbit hole of that again. And so even though I was breastfeeding overnight, because my understanding was if you were feeding overnight, less likely that your cycle will come back. But my cycle did come back at 7 or 8 months postnatal, even though I still fed overnight for the first year, I think. And so pretty much as soon as my cycle came back, we were ready to try and have another baby. Like, Mussy was a fantastic newborn. It definitely didn't put us off wanting more children. So we thought, why not try? Like, who knows how long this will take? And fortunately, it didn't take very long again. So I fell pregnant when Mussy was probably about 10 months or 11 months. And I announced it to my husband on Christmas Day, which was exciting, and had to hold on to the secret for a whole day because I'd found out the day before, but I wanted to wrap it up as a Christmas present for him, and that was hard. But yeah, we were really excited, and I definitely didn't have the same anxieties in this pregnancy about miscarrying or anything. I just had this sort of innate confidence, and it was a very strange feeling given I think once you've had a miscarriage, I thought you'd always hold on to that, but no, I had this confidence everything was going to be okay, and yeah, it was really good. So I continued to feed Mussy, and I thought, I wonder how he'll go being pregnant, because everyone says that they can go off it a little bit. And he ended up self-weaning at around 13 months. So I think he did sense something was different. I personally wasn't emotionally ready to finish feeding. He just one day bit me, rolled over, and then never looked back again.
Oh.
I thought,
Brutal last feed.
I thought our last feed would be like, a salt lamp on and this wonderful, it was me telling him this is the last feed and it's beautiful, and no, that's exactly how it ended.
Oh, funny. I think it's funny too, often you'll have the last feed and you don't realise as well, and you're like, and you haven't kind of celebrated it or whatever. I think it happens in a lot of different ways for people, doesn't it? I should have asked you really how your pelvic floor recovered from your first labour. I know you had a cesarean, but it's still affected with the weight of the baby and things, isn't it? How are you feeling in your recovery?
Yeah, that's a good point, because I think a lot of women have that notion that if you have a C-section, you don't have to worry about it. And I'm big on pushing it that no, you've still had a pregnancy, and that's a lot of weight. So I had a little bit of stress incontinence in the first pregnancy, even though I was doing my pelvic floor regularly and looking after myself. So that was a really good sign to me to make sure I did some really good postnatal recovery too. But touch wood, my pelvic floor has been brilliant. I've had no concerns whatsoever. I certainly felt the load in my second pregnancy just from having, I think, a first pregnancy. You can tell that there's a little bit of a difference second time round, and I think also because I was lifting a toddler. But I'm pretty diligent. I think I definitely practice what I preach. I do pelvic floor 3 times a day. I do it every time I talk about it, really, and I do tend to talk about it a lot.
Now that you've said
Standing up, squeezing. So my pelvic floor recovery, yes, was really, really good. I was going to go get checked by a colleague if I'd had a vaginal birth, but I actually didn't go and get checked after the Caesar because I was fairly confident that everything was A-OK, and I knew what to look out for if I was concerned. So, but I do recommend everyone have a checkup afterwards, particularly after a vaginal delivery or if you have any concerns. But yeah, I've been very fortunate. I got back into high impact exercise and all of that, and yeah, touch wood, haven't had any issues.
So good. And in between your 2 babies, did you have a bit of a sea change? Did you move to the beach then?
Yes, we did. So I was actually, not in between, I was pregnant already. Oh, yeah. We have a bit of a habit of moving in pregnancies, or when we've got newborns, we're actually moving in a couple of weeks' time. Suburb, but just into a different house, which is a little bit closer to the action. Yeah. And she'll be 6 weeks then. And we're like, oh, why do we do this to ourselves? But yeah, we moved down to the Surf Coast from Melbourne, which has been the best decision we ever made. It's amazing down here. But I decided to stay with my same obstetrician. So we were still planning to give birth in Melbourne, but just living down here. It's about an hour and a half from Melbourne. So yeah, it's been a great move. Highly recommend it.
Yeah, we've got a beach house on the Surf Coast, the best.
Yeah, I always see your holiday stories. Yeah. They look great.
Well, my parents do. I can't afford a beach house, but anyway.
That's what you need, just a family member.
Yeah, that's what you need. Now, you mentioned before that you went into this pregnancy with a different kind of preparation technique with classes and things, and you're obviously trying for a VBAC. So what sort of things did you start doing this time around?
So this time around, I realised, first of all, that I hadn't really included JA in any of my preparation. So I was having a chat one day and I was telling him about some active birth skills, and he just sort of had no idea what I was talking about. And then I realised that I just assumed, because I knew it, that I would just direct him during labour. And I thought, no, that's ridiculous, because if you're in the throes of labour, the last thing you need to be is in your cortical brain trying to tell someone how to nurture you. You need to have already taught him these skills so that you don't have to be directive, that he can just, try things, and if they fit, they fit. And so we actually had a little active birth class, just the 2 of us, and I was teaching him all I knew. So that was a really good thing, because we realised we hadn't actually done that first time round. And I also did Hypno Birth. So I didn't do a class, but I was recommended the Marie Mongan book, which I think is just called the Hypno Birthing book. And I really liked that actually, because I'm big on meditation and mindfulness and mindset training. And I think for me, I knew that would be the biggest thing I needed to do to labour well. Like I knew I would keep myself physically well, but it's the mental side of things I wanted to train beforehand. So I read that book and I really liked that. And then I downloaded, on your discount, thank you very much, I downloaded the Hypno Birth tracks. Yeah, and I listened to those at night time, probably not as much as I should have. I know some friends who listen to it every single night. I certainly wasn't that regular, but I really liked those. I thought they were really helpful. And then I did little hacks like, I'm not sure if you see me talk about it, but like the cold shower, where I would have a shower and then at the end of the shower I would blast cold water for 20 or 30 seconds and practice relaxing, practice my mindset training amongst the discomfort of how cold the water was. And it gets really cold down here as well. And those sorts of things were really helpful for me, because I knew that labour would be uncomfortable. And I would have to be able to focus, and I'd have to be able to have practiced that beforehand, so that I had built up that sort of brain training so I could walk into labour with that strength. And so little things like that, which sound ridiculous, but I swear you should try it, because it really is helpful. Just being able to relax your body and tell yourself, it's just a sensation. It's not a bad sensation. Being freezing cold, it's just a sensation. Like not attaching stories to it, because I know with labour it can be very easy for some women to say, oh, this is painful, this is sore, I don't want it, I don't like it, I want to get rid of it, as opposed to trying to roll with the waves of a labour contraction and sort of just stop resisting it and instead go with the flow. And whilst I didn't actually get to practice that, I thought that sort of mindset training would have held me in good stead.
Yeah,
so
good life skills to have. I know at the end of my pregnancy yoga, they used to make us do a wall sit where you lean against the wall and you're in like a 90-degree position and they're pregnant, so it's really hard, and you just try and do it for as long as you can, but it's the same concept of It's just a sensation and it's for a short period of time and I can manage.
Yeah, and it's not an injury, it's it's a physiological, a productive pain, I guess, a muscular pain. Yeah.
And so what were the end stages of Pia's pregnancy like then?
So again, she was a brilliant pregnancy. She was probably, I would say, even easier than Mussy. I didn't have as many hash browns this time, so the weight gain wasn't as much, which I think made a huge difference, because I felt more active. And I think just being active with a toddler as well, you're on your feet all day. You don't really have time to just sit on the couch and bludge as much. So I was generally just a bit fitter and stronger, I think, this time around, which made a big difference. But the whole time through her pregnancy, we were going for a VBAC. So my obstetrician was totally on board. There was no reason why I couldn't have a VBAC, an attempt for a VBAC. There's another word, a TOLAC, which is trial of labour after Caesar. And I also really like that, because it's like giving you the option to trial, as opposed to saying I'm having a vaginal birth. Like, I know it's just a terminology, but it's I know a lot of women who are trying for a VBAC like or prefer the word TOLAC. But so we were both on the same page that we were really motivated to trial for a VBAC as long as everything was looking good. I certainly don't have the mentality of vaginal birth at all costs. Like, I wasn't going in there with my blinkers on just wanting to have this vaginal birth at all costs. I was not in that state of mind. I was wanting a vaginal birth if everything was looking good, I was healthy, baby was healthy, and my body was willing to give it a go. I wasn't going to try and, I guess, thrash that idea at all costs. I just didn't want that for me or for my baby. And so I was measuring fine, so I wasn't big this time, which was really good, because I think that was probably my concern, that if I was measuring big, then does that mean I was going to have to be induced again and all of that? But everything was measuring really well. And so the talk was always just around, everything's going well, let's just keep touching base, and it will just be a matter of how far overdue you're going to go if you do, and then what we do then. And so I just never thought I would go overdue. I think in my mind, like, I had packed my bags from 36 weeks, I think, and I had tried to wrap up all my work around the 37-week mark, because in my head I was like, 38 weeks, baby's going to come out, it's going to be great. anyway, I ended up going quite overdue. And so we had to start having the discussions around that. And I thought that maybe because I'd had a Caesar, there was more concern with how far overdue you can go. But the good thing to know was that there wasn't. It's all still to do with placental function. So you don't have to, like, you can still go just as overdue post-Caesar as you could if you hadn't had one, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So that was good to know. I didn't feel like I was being pressured to have to get baby out earlier than I would have if I hadn't had a Caesar. So I had told myself that this time round I just really wanted to get to my due date, and that was my goal, because I think with Mussy there was still that little itch in the back of my mind that, oh, what if I had just gone a couple more weeks, would my body have gone into labour? And that's a terrible mindset to be in, because you're never going to know. So you're sort of tormenting yourself around it. But I knew that I just was really motivated to get to my due date, so at least I could say, okay, well, we got there, and if something happened, something happened. If not, so be it. But my obstetrician was quite happy for me to keep going, so was I. I felt comfortable enough. So we got to about 6 days over, and at this stage I was trying acupuncture because I'd had success with that for my cycles in the past, and so I thought, why not just give it a crack? I've got nothing to lose. I certainly wasn't going crazy on the pineapple, sex, curries, all of that, because I didn't want to lose my mind. But
dates?
yeah.
Are you doing dates?
I didn't do dates. I have heard of that one though. No, I thought I'll just stick to acupuncture and walking every day. And I really do believe, like, if baby's going to come, they'll come. And if they're not, they're not. So I didn't want to drive myself crazy. And so 6 days over, and I didn't want to get checked either, because I didn't want to be disappointed if my cervix wasn't changing, because I was very aware that it can change last minute. Like, you can go from your cervix not being ready to, okay, we're in labour, things are happening. So I didn't want to get checked because I didn't want to be disappointed. But when we got to about 6 days over, we decided to have a check just to see if there was any movement in the cervix, if my body was showing some signs of baby moving down and engaging, or at least my cervix thinning a little bit or dilating. And look, nothing had changed at 6 days, and I wasn't too concerned because I still knew I had time up my sleeve, and you know, we weren't necessarily going to have to make a decision right then. But that was maybe the Thursday, so we made a decision that come 9 days post, if nothing had happened, we'd book in for a Caesar. And I was completely on board with that. That's sort of how I expected it would plan out. But I still had this hope that, no, I'm sure I'm going to go into labour. Like, come on, 10 days post, like, that's so much extra time, baby, come out. So we booked that in, and I was really comfortable with it. And I had wrapped my head around, yep, this is good. I've done what I wanted to do. I've gotten to this stage, and I just trust that if my body wants to do something, it will. And if it doesn't, I had a great recovery last time. I had a great experience. I'm happy to go through that again. It wasn't at all a problem for me. But I still did obviously have that hope that, oh, come on, you know, at least I'm going to feel what labour feels like. You know, I've never felt a contraction. And so we got to 9 days, 9 days post. And we booked a night in the city. We thought, final date night, you know, go out for dinner, watch a movie, and then we'll go in and have our baby the next day. And nothing had happened at this stage. I wasn't even having Braxton Hicks. I was really not showing too many signs of labour coming on. I'm quite convinced that I would have been like a good 44-week gestator back in the day if they'd let you go that far. I don't think my body was even close to wanting to get things moving. And so we had this date day planned. And I'd wrapped my head around, yep, we're going to have a scheduled C-section. We were going to surprise our families. We just told them we were having a checkup. We got Mussy looked after by my mum, and we were going to then FaceTime them afterwards and say, hey, baby's here. And it was going to be great, because we thought if we can't have a surprise, we want to be able to surprise everyone else. And that was the other strange thing, was picking a birth date. Like, not that I had a huge amount of control of that, but so Pierre was born on the 10th of September, and I was like, well, the 9th of the 9th, 2019, that's a great birthday to remember. And then September 11 is not really a day that I'd want my daughter born on, because it has, you know, connotations with another event. And it was really strange picking a date. Like, it's such a surreal thing to say, okay, we're going to have a baby on this date. Yeah. That was really weird to me. Yes, anyway, so we had this final date day, and I woke up in the morning and I was feeling something. I couldn't even pinpoint it. It was it was like a tightening, which everyone describes labour as, but I'd never felt this before. So I thought, I'll just ignore it, like it's no big deal. We took Mussy to daycare that day, and we were just getting things ready, and I was noticing it was becoming a little bit more regular, and I thought, no, surely not. Like, I'm having a C-section tomorrow. Like, it wouldn't happen at the final hour. Surely not. But then I was thinking, everyone does say that. You know, you book in an induction or a cesarean, and then it's like your body finally relaxes, and then you go into labour. And I thought, no, it's fine. And I really wanted to go watch this movie and have this dinner. So I was almost like, I almost don't want to go into labour now. I've got this lovely night planned. You know, this is throwing a spanner in the works. So I didn't tell my husband because I thought, well, I don't want to get him worked up for something that may not be anything. So I kept it to myself, and I was fine. Like, they really were very, very, very mild. And I was very aware that labour's a 10 out of 10. So I would have said this was a 0.5 out of 10. I was just aware of it. So we drove to Melbourne and we dropped my son off, and they were starting to become more regular. Like, I was keeping a bit of an eye on the time. They were about 5 to 7 minutes apart. And in my mind, I was like, that sounds really close to me. They were mild, but that sounds really close to me. So I was like, okay, just keep an eye on this, Laura. So we're driving to the hotel, and I said to JA, look, I don't want to alarm you or like throw a spanner in the works, but I think I might be in early labour. And he's like, what? Why did you tell me this? What? Like, what are we going to do? And he's like, oh, now I'm really excited, but I don't want to get my hopes up. And we were just in this like, oh, of course this happens last minute. So we went to dinner and we went to the movie, and they were becoming more intense, and they were, again, still 5 to 7 minutes apart, but like to the point where I was having to wriggle around in my chair. Like, I couldn't just pretend they weren't there. And so I'm starting to think, well, I'm a bit on the clock now. I've got this surgery booked in at 9 a.m. What do I do? Like, do I just cancel it, or do I wait till the morning, see how things are progressing? Like, silly, but my main concern was I didn't want to put everyone out. I didn't want to, like, cancel theatre last minute and then, you know, like, disrupt the whole schedule, which is ridiculous in hindsight. But so I called the birth suite, and I've never had to call them before because I've never been in labour. I said, look, I think I'm in early labour. I've got this cesarean booked at 9. Can you maybe just give my obstetrician a heads up that maybe I'll cancel if things progress? Like, I'm not sure. I just really wanted to tell him, hey, here's a possibility I could cancel the Caesar. I just wanted to let you know so that you don't, like, wake up and get to the hospital and then I pull it, you know, last minute. And they were like, well, you have to come in and get checked. And I said, well, if I come in and I get checked, can I come back to my hotel? I don't really want to be in the hospital. This is very early. Whatever it is, I know it's early. Like, labour is intense. This is not intense. And they said, well, no, once you're admitted, you have to stay. And I thought, well, no, I don't want to go to hospital. Like, this is, and I just thought, well, I'm going to be in hospital forever. Like, this is so early. This is when I want to be in my comfort zone at home or at the hotel. So I said, look, I'll see how I go. I'll call you back. And I just never called them back because I thought, no, this is far too early to go in. And the only reason I'm calling is because I have this booked in at 9. So I didn't sleep at all that night because I was having, like, they were 4 to 6 minutes by that stage, and they were getting pretty uncomfortable. Like, I couldn't lie down when I got a contraction. I had to get up and sort of wriggle around, and I was starting to think maybe I should put my TENS machine on. And all the while I'm also going, what do I do? Like, am I going to have a natural birth after all of this, or do I cancel? It was just such a mind warp to go through this at the final hour. So I was stressing about, what do I do? Like, and so we got to 6 a.m. and I said to my husband, like, this is labour. I know this is, because this is very different to anything I've ever had. This is exactly how everyone describes it. It's tightenings in my back and in my front. They're regular. They last for about a minute and then they go away. Like, this is textbook early labour. I said, it's not intense, but it's definitely labour. So I finally got onto my obstetrician, because there's like an emergency number you can call where you can bypass birth suite. And he said, look, it really does sound good, Laura. This is great. Like, he wasn't at all pushing, well, you've got this booked in, we have to continue with it. He was like, great, let's come in though and let's just check you so we can make an informed decision about whether we cancel theatre or, you know, what are we going to do? And I thought, well, yes, that makes sense, because we don't actually know where I'm at or what's happening. Let's just check on it. And I said to him, surely it'd been about 18 hours by then of mild contractions, but consistent contractions. They hadn't stopped at all. And I said, surely something's changed in my cervix. And like I said, would you often see a woman who had been labouring for this long with no changes in their cervix? And he said, to be honest, probably not. If you've been having 18 hours of this, then yeah, we'd expect to see something. So I was like, great, we're going to have something. Like, it's going to be thinner. It's going to be 1 centimetre. Like, just give me something. So we drove. It would have been a 10-minute drive from the hotel to the hospital. And I had about 4 contractions on the way in there. And they were fairly uncomfortable. Like, I had to sort of position myself awkwardly in the chair and do not hit a speed bump, JA, whatever you do. And I was thinking, thank God we booked a hotel in the city, because if this was an hour and a half drive from home, I can see how women do not like that car trip. Like, it was not fun, and I was early labour. So I get into hospital and I'm like, right, this is happening, guys. We're having a VBAC. Who would have thunk it? Like, this is crazy. And so anyway, he checked me. My cervix had not budged 1 inch. Like, it was long, it was closed, there was nothing happening, nothing at all. And I was like, come on, body, what are you doing? Like, in my mind, I had said, well, given that this is the only time I've ever gone into labour, I have to pursue this. Like, I can't not see how this pans out. And that was my sort of take on it. So that's why I was like, I can't have a Caesar at 9. Like, I have to give my body a shot at doing this and seeing how it goes. And my obstetrician had a really good take on it, which in hindsight I think was exactly what I needed to hear, is that this is actually really good, Laura, because your body has tried to go into labour. It's tried to do what it needs to do, but nothing is happening. Like, it's not moving, it's not a productive contraction, things aren't changing down there. The head was still high, my cervix hadn't changed, and I'd been labouring for 18 hours. And it's interesting how the same scenario but 2 different outlooks on it can be so different, because the options were, like, again, I was not pressured, but the options were you can continue with the Caesar at 9, given that things aren't really progressing, or we can reassess. Like, you can go for a walk, see how things pick up. Oh, I should mention as well, post-Caesar, they can't induce you the same way that they can if you haven't had a Caesar. So they only like, well, my obstetrician anyway, only likes to mechanically induce you as opposed to hormonally induce you. So that means he was only really happy to use the balloon catheter, which stretches your cervix, or to break your waters, but you obviously need to have some dilation to do that, as opposed to using the Prostin gel or the Syntocin drip, because it comes with a lot more complications during the hormonal induction. And I know some women have had that post-Caesar and it's worked out all right, but he wasn't a fan of that. And to be honest, I don't think I was a huge fan of that either. I was quite happy to go into spontaneous labour and have a birth that way, or have a Caesar. I didn't really want to be inducing my body if it wasn't showing signs of being ready.
What's the concept behind that for people who perhaps haven't had a cesarean, that they don't want to put extra pressure on where they've made that incision previously, so that you don't want to stress that area any more than needs to be, sort of?
Spot on, yeah. Okay. So if you're producing artificial contractions that are really intense, it can increase the pressure on that scar, and whilst it's very low, there is a small chance of uterine rupture, and we obviously don't want to go down that pathway. So whereas the mechanical ways of inducing, my impression was they were a little bit safer. So, but the plan was always the safest way is for you to go into spontaneous labour, which my body was just being very stubborn about. So from an induction point of view, it's not like at that stage they could have broke my waters because my cervix wasn't dilated. They couldn't use the gel because it was hormonal, and then they could have tried the catheter, which is something I think you put in and you leave overnight, and then if it's dilated enough you can then break your waters. But when the head is still high, there's a risk that then you can have cord prolapse, and that can be really dangerous. And again, we were starting just to get into murky territory where I was like, how risky do I want this to be for the sake of having a vaginal birth when everything is really healthy and well now? And again, 24 hours before, I was so calm and ready to have a cesarean, and then it was just this final spatter in the works of having to make that decision again, which was just hilarious in hindsight, but such a mind warp at the time, because I was like, I'd already come to terms with this. I was okay with it. I was ready. I was happy, and now this has happened. But we agreed in the end, given all the information I had, that the safest and best option would be to do the Caesar at 9 still. And I was, again, same with Mussy. Once I made the decision, I was completely fine with it. It was just the making the decision part that was really, really difficult, especially when my body was trying to do something that I've had a few friends and clients who have had similar things, and I think they call it spurious labor, which is like false labor, which is essentially where you get the contractions, but it's not actually doing what it needs to do at the cervix, and so baby's head's not dropping down and you're not actually getting the dilation. And I think these are the women back in the day that would labour for weeks and weeks and weeks and nothing would really happen. And so I'm really glad that I have the option to be able to have my baby surgically, and everyone is healthy and well and happy. And so we made that decision, and I remember, like, we'd only just made this decision. It was maybe 8:30 or 8:40, and this midwife came in, and my husband had gone to get the camera, because we're like, right, let's get the camera, let's get sorted. She obviously didn't understand what had gone down before that. I was crying, and my eyes were all swollen, and she said, okay, here's the scrubs for your husband. And I said, okay, he's just gone to the car to get the camera. And she's like, well, come on, love, you can't keep theatre waiting, you've got a surgery at 9, let's get moving, like, hush hush. It's like I wanted to cry again. I was like, I just made a really big decision about how I'm going to birth my baby, don't you rush me.
And I'm in labour.
Exactly, like, I'm really uncomfortable, this is like a big mental decision, like, I don't care if I put surgery theatre behind 5 minutes.
I guess she's looking at your file and it says scheduled Caesar.
Correct,
So
she's like, come on, you should have had this organised. So I thought that was quite funny. But look, again, it was a really, really lovely experience. It was exactly the same. It felt like deja vu. I was really teary. I don't know what it is, because I'm not scared to have a Caesar. Like, it's not fun to have a spinal and all those sorts of things. I never go to hospital, I'm never sick, I don't ever have to have needles, so that stuff's not fun. But it was just like this emotional purging beforehand of, okay, I've made the decision, I'm happy with the decision, I'm about to meet my baby. Like, it's just this overwhelm of emotions, and I just cry the whole time, and everyone was always really concerned about me, like, is everything okay? And I'm like, it is. It's just like a purge of everything. And I don't know, maybe people don't cry before a Caesar, but I've definitely cried both times, and I'm sure I will in the future as well. It's just a really big, after you've made that decision. But this time round, everything was the same. So the operation was very much the same, except I lay down for my spinal instead of sat, which was actually really good. I think this anaesthetist was just a bit different. But what was really cool, the anaesthetist said, do you want to see them pulling the baby out? And I was like, hell yeah, I want to see this. Like, I'm all about I know some people find it gory, but I've always loved, that's why I'm in the health area, I think, blood and guts and medicine and the insides of your body and all those things that most people never want to look at. But he said, I can hold a mirror up if you want and you can watch. I was like, yes, please, that would be amazing, because I didn't see that with Mussy. I saw the photos afterwards, which were really cool, but not in real time. So he held the mirror up and I got to see them pull her out, which was incredible. And she had this full head of black hair, and I didn't know it was a girl. And again, JA announced it as, we have a little Pia, because we knew the name. And it was just awesome. Like, it was really good. And the difference this time is because it was a scheduled cesarean, she stayed with me the whole time. So apart from like 5 minutes where I don't actually know what they do, to be honest. I think they just maybe wrap her up and weigh her or whatnot. She was 4 kilos as well, so Mussy was 4.1 kilos and she was 4 kilos. So I breed them fairly big, and it was lovely. So she stayed with me in recovery, which was incredible. I probably didn't realise, because I didn't know any different with Mussy, just how nice it is to actually have Bubs there straight away. And she latched and she fed like a champ, and I felt really, really good. So physically, mentally, I felt really, really good. After, I think, because the whole pregnancy, it was just felt like a bit of an emotional roller coaster of VBAC, cesarean, again, like always thinking, how can I prepare myself better or do more, or like what if it happens like this, what if it happens like that, and it's just it takes its toll on you, the mental load of it. Or for me anyway, it took a real toll constantly without even realizing it. It was always in the back of my mind, sort of what's going to happen, and I'm almost quite relieved that I don't have to think about that again. So going forward, it's just going to be very different because I know how baby's going to come out, unless it throws another spanner in the works and I go into labour at 35 weeks or something. And
shit's right out at home or something.
A home VBAC. Oh, God.
We've talked about all the fantastic positive things about having your community and having your pregnancy posse people coming along with you. But were there elements when you were making your decisions where that came into your mind? Because I know in my labour, when mine was stop-start, I was thinking, everyone's waiting to hear like what happens in this labour.
Yes.
There's a little bit of like social pressure to get it right. Did you feel a little bit of that? Or
I was lucky in that I didn't have too many people asking me like, is baby come yet, or when's this all happening? I was very open with the fact that I was overdue and nothing was happening, so I think that probably kept the questions at bay. But certainly after birth, I tried to have the time off in hospital from social media and work and things like that, but obviously everyone was really interested in whether I got my VBAC or whether I had a Caesar again, and I knew we were going to record this, so I wanted to save it until I actually told the story properly as well. But I certainly had a lot of people asking me after birth, like, how did it all go? And that's why I'm so glad we had the time to do this together, because I think it's such a great way to share the whole story with people rather than replying to everyone individually and without the context of what happened. And but I did have a little bit of social pressure. Certainly a lot more people interested in how things went down and in the story of it, especially because there's so many women in the same position as myself with the VBAC and trying to decide, and I know myself, I was always looking for stories about successful VBACs and how things went down, and you're always looking for stories, which can be really great because it's super positive and you know that women have done it. But I also found it could be a little bit negative for me because for example, I went 9 days over and I was really comfortable with that, but then I read a story about a woman who went 14 days over and had a great VBAC, and I was like, but what if I just wait another 5 days? And I just thought, Laura, there's never going to be a magic time where you'll always hear about someone who went a bit longer and had a VBAC, and you can't torment yourself with the what ifs, like I was saying before. But what's really cool, I wanted to mention, and I know you've done this on your podcast before, is the day after my obstetrician came to see me to check on everything, and he was saying that next time, and he's just done a couple of these, but we can do the maternal assisted Caesar.
Oh yeah,
so
you should do that. You'd be like perfect candidate.
I'm so keen. Yes, all my family and friends have like screwed their faces up when I've told them about it, but again, I like that sort of stuff. So so I can pull, because he is so supportive of trying to make it a really wonderful experience, so it doesn't just feel like a surgery. And he was saying, it feels so much more physiological if you can pull baby up onto your chest. They glove you up, and I think they get the head out, maybe the shoulders, and then you just do the easy part, pulling baby up onto your chest. But I think that's so exciting. I'm really keen to trial that, so I'm glad he suggested it as well, because
that's rare.
I really wasn't sure.
Do you want to give him a shout out? What's your obstetrician's name? He'll be
Peter
flooded with the requests now.
He's at Francis Perry. He's just really, I found him to be exactly what I needed, because he could logically help me reason rather than emotionally. I know it is an emotional decision too, but he helped me logically reason the things and the decisions I had to make, but without ever putting any pressure. Like, it was always my call, and I just found him to be the perfect blend of what I needed, with supportive and comforting, but also like risk averse and safe, and like, this is going to keep us all healthy. And for me, that just worked really well, which was great. So next time I get to pull, if I have another, get to pull baby out.
Well, if people want to connect with you, you're on Instagram, you're always generously sharing lots of little clips, and it's all very accurate because you've just done it whilst pregnant. So all the videos are you heavily pregnant doing things, or not so heavily at the start. But you're Physio Laura on Instagram. And if people want to check out the Pregnancy Posse, do you want to just give give us a quick recap of how that works?
Yeah, so you can find out more at thepregnancyposse.com. And what it is an online program, and it guides you week by week throughout your pregnancy. So every single week there's different workouts which are tailored to that stage of pregnancy, because how you work out at week 13 is different to how you should be working out at, say, week 40. So it's all created by me. It's all evidence-based. There's a whole heap of resources on pelvic floor training, abdominal separation, managing pelvic pain, back pain, preparing for birth, all of that. There's a wonderful forum with all the mamas who get to just, introduce themselves, have a chat, share stories, ask questions, and then I do a weekly Q&A session. You'll probably see Miss Pia quite a lot because she's always strapped to me, but I answer like any questions that pop up for all the ladies. And yeah, it's just a really nice space where you can learn all the things that you don't often hear about not till it's too late, but until they're a problem for you. So I think I'm really big on trying to prevent things from popping up if they can. So just knowing the knowledge in advance is really powerful, I think. So that's what I'm big on, and just providing a safe space for exercise, because I think a lot of women either stop exercising because they're scared about what they can and can't do, or they continue exercise that maybe not be so appropriate for them. So that's the Pregnancy Posse.
Absolutely, yeah, and I'll put a link in because all my listeners can trial it out for 7 days for $1, and I'll put the link they need to click on. So it's just a monthly subscription, but it's fantastic. And I am a bit like your first time at using SheBirth. I did a little bit and then I lost track, and now I'm looking back like, oh damn, I should have been doing that the whole time along.
Next time, number 4.
Learn from my mistakes. Oh God, not number 4. But we're running out of time, but it was so lovely to hear your stories, Laura. I was hanging out to find out what really happened. So thank you so much. And I think watch this space because Laura's got a podcast coming up soon.
Yes, that's the plan. Yes. Thank you so much, Sophie. Yeah, it was really good to share that. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. I hope you enjoyed Laura's interview. If you'd like to see some more pictures of her and her beautiful babies, you can head over to australianbirthstories.com/PhysioLaura. That's her work name, so it's Physio Laura. And if you haven't already signed up to my newsletter...
Hey mamas, Laura here. I really hope you enjoyed me sharing about my experience with my second pregnancy and birth in today's podcast episode. I really hope it helped anyone who might be in a similar position of trying for a VBAC, or who is trying to process another pregnancy and birth after a previous C-section. Please do head over to my socials at Physio Laura if you have any follow-up questions or want to chat with me. I always love to hear your feedback. In the last episode in this series, we'll be doing a Q&A style episode chatting all about C-section scars, recovery after birth, age gaps between births, and so much more. I will catch you soon for the final episode in this 5-part C-section birth series, where I'll be doing a Q&A on the most commonly asked questions around cesareans. Until then, mamas, sending you wonderful pregnancy vibes and enjoy the incredible journey that is pregnancy.